Hi everyone, and welcome back to my page. As you can see, we are here at my sink slash kitchen counter, and we are ready to do a couple of emergency repots. Now, I say emergency because I normally don't repot at this time, number one. And number two, I do generally repot my entire collection at one time. And so we do have a couple of anomalies with regard to my repotting routine that we are going to jump into. So first I wanted to start off and give you a background as to, the particular reasons I repot and the different plants and so far. So as many of you know, I am heavily into orchids, as you can see here, paphiopedilums, the two that you can see on the screen. And for my paphs, I actually normally repot them every 2 years. I do grow in organic medium, but I don't water very frequently, so my medium does not break down very fast. I don't fertilize frequently, so the medium doesn't break down very fast. Fertilizers and the materials that are in fertilizers, such as nitrogen, will speed up the breakdown of your medium. And for that's the reason why I use slow release fertilizers, and I just don't do the water mixing anymore. And for my paphs, most would suggest, repotting these every year. But again, different conditions will call for different types of measures. And for my paphs, I mainly pot them in a mix of sphagnum moss and bark, and that is because although they are very, very water retentive, loving plants, they don't necessarily like to stay wet, and moss stays wet. It also affects the pH in a way that paphs don't like. I don't get too much into pH, but I don't grow my paphs in all moss, and it's worked for me for 2 years, so I've kept that up. My phalaenopsis, although I don't have any that are due for repot, they're all doing very well. They're all potted in moss, so they vary. They can be repotted once a year or maybe even every 2 years, depending on how fast that moss breaks down. And again, outside of the scheduled or predictable repots, we have your emergency ASAP repots, whether, let's say, for example, in these instances, my maranta plant has basically died off a lot of its growth, and I feel that this pot may be a bit too big for it now, so we're gonna downsize that plant. This plant, my Lindley-Kupowitz, a hybrid paphiopedilum, this one seems to be raising out the pot, so the roots need a deeper pot. So like the maranta is probably gonna go in here. The Lindley-Kupowitz may actually get a wider pot, or I may give it a long cup. I'm not too sure just yet. And then we have a complex paphiopedilum here that is definitely gonna go in a longer cup now that we have new growth. This is drying way too fast, so I wanna give it a bit more medium to keep that moisture retained in there. So let's go ahead and move on to our maranta. Now my houseplants, they are potted in a soilless potting mix. So let's just move this out the way. This is for the orchids later. The orchids aren't going in new medium, they're just going in new pots. This is going in new medium because I think this soil is the reason why I lost this plant. And I'm gonna put this into a smaller pot with, I know this says potting soil, Dr. Q's Filthy Rich Gold, but it's actually soilless. It contains sphagnum peat moss, softwood bark, compost, coconut coir, perlite for aeration. It also has fertilizer and kelp in it, which is very good for the health of the plant. One of the reasons why I don't have to fertilize. So let's get this baby out of the pot here and see what's going on with the roots. And I'll put up a picture of what this plant used to look like, because this plant was actually pretty full before I started losing a lot of the growth. And I have a feeling that it's the soil here. So as we can see, the plant was, I think I watered this like 2 days ago, so the soil should be pretty moist. Yeah, this soil is really compact, and although I live in a dry environment, I prefer for my plants to be able to dry out so that I can gauge when that's happening. Sometimes this thick soil that compacts, although you may think, oh, you live in a low humidity environment, and a low humidity environment may, I don't know, you may think it suggests that you need something that's gonna stay wet longer, but it really depends on your plant, guys. And I know these are moisture-loving plants, and it seems like the roots are pretty good in here. So again, I don't know why a lot of the growth on here passed away. It just like threw all of the growth off. Yeah, see, I really don't want to take apart this root ball, but I need to get these growths out of here. See, it's weird because they all look so green down here, but the leaves all died. Like, they shriveled. And I'm not sure if I have a picture of the plant dead, but I mean, the leaves were like shriveling, and then they were dying and falling off, and I was just like, what is going on? And this portion was the only part that shriveled but came back to life after thorough watering and nutrient solution. Now, I don't necessarily have a nutrient solution, but I did add some banana water. I steeped some bananas in eggshells overnight for some potassium and calcium, and it seemed to have worked for some of the plant, but not all of it. So let's just see if we can, yeah, I think I may just leave this root ball all together here. See, we can squeeze some of this. Some of these guys just might have to stay in here because it seems like they're all connected to each other. But you know, I'm not an expert on houseplants, but for orchids, when you break apart these root balls on orchids like oncidiums that develop root balls like this, it normally promotes more root growth. Yeah, and I really want to get these out of here because I don't want root rot. And if these aren't alive anymore, their roots aren't going to take up water. Out of here. You see, I don't know what's going on with these. I don't know if I'm supposed to be keeping these or why, because they don't look dead. The leaves just died. Okay, last one. Pull you off. And this little baby. I think this is actually, where did I put, yeah, this is gonna go in my Chinese takeout jar because I have a feeling that this is gonna put on growth pretty fast. So we'll actually keep the medium and I won't just sift out these roots here. I don't think the medium is that bad actually. I think maybe it was the plant. Yeah, so right before this plant like went, it bloomed like furiously. And I tried to get pictures, but the blooms are so small. They're so tiny. Like, it was so hard to photograph these blooms. So let's pack that in. You know, when I used to repot, I used to put rocks on the bottom of my pots, and now I don't do that anymore because I found out that all it does is dry the pot out faster. It doesn't even like necessarily create more drainage, so to say, because all the water will do is just like pile up above the rocks, like at the soil level right above the rocks. So I just stopped doing that and started like measuring my water better for soil. And when it comes to soil, like for example, this is in a pot with like a small hole right here. I'm probably gonna end up covering that up and just putting holes at the bottom. But like when it just comes to soil, I find that it holds so much water that you don't have to drench things. The water's gonna find its way through everything. And everything will stay wet, the roots will get their water, and then everyone's happy. So yeah, this maranta is gonna stay in this pot here. And I don't know what it's gonna go in. But yeah, so there is our maranta, now downsized to a takeout cup. On to our next plant. So we have a orchid, Paphiopedilum, Lindley Kupowitz, a hybrid. And the challenge I'm having with this one is that, let's see if we can get that into focus. The top of the plant just keeps coming out the medium. See that? Yeah. And I need that inside the medium so that the new roots are going right into the medium. That's not good. So we're going to repot this into, I don't know yet guys. I might put it in just a larger pot so I don't have to water as often. But let's see about these longer cup as well, and I'll just put a hole at the bottom. So we have some leftover medium from some plants that I took out that weren't surviving, and the medium is probably just over 8 months old, so I'm going to reuse that. I water all my plants with the Physan 20 solution, so there are no harmful viruses or bacteria that are living inside of the medium, thank God. And this is my old school potting. I used to put rocks on the bottom of my pots, not for drainage, for weight, because the plants used to tip the pots over. But now, I don't really worry about that because I pot pretty well with my medium. Let's see. I don't think we'll have a lot of dead roots on here actually, because this plant has been doing pretty well. So most of the roots that we find, yeah, these are all alive. Thank God. Yay, Lindley Kupowitz. We got a little growth here. I hope this is in focus. Is this in focus? Yeah. I should probably move this up a bit. So we got some growth there. Pretty good. Let's remove that leaf. Yeah, whenever you repot, you always want to take off any of the dead matter, any of the dead leaves, any of the dead roots. I think I just broke off a new growth. Great, Paul, great. One of the leaves didn't look well, and that was definitely a new growth that I broke off. But I have faith that this plant will recover because I put this plant through quite a lot. Ooh, I think we're getting a little bulb down here. We might be blooming. Oh, I love this moss. I think this is like called spag moss, and I get it off of Amazon. So good. Yeah, I think we're gonna do a deep cup for you, Miss Lindley, because that fit there looks pretty good. That looks great. And we've got room at the bottom. This looks good too, but I would have to use a lot of my medium in there. Yeah, so let's go ahead. Let's go ahead and repot Miss Lindley. Some medium at the bottom there. Push her down. Not too hard with your paphs because these roots are very, very sensitive. Very sensitive. Way more sensitive than your phals. So let's get all this bark and moss in there. Again, I use a combination. Let me get a skewer. I use a combination of bark and moss. And I'm just gonna get a skewer so I can make sure there are no air pockets, because although I'm not gonna poke holes on the side of this, paph roots and orchid roots in general, they just love to be nice and snug. They really do. Whenever the roots are snug, I just feel like the growth is so much better. Like the roots are just like, yeah, just moving through all the medium. Again, I like to just take this and go around the edges, and it just makes sure that the medium is falling evenly. Just like that. Get all the medium in all the holes. And you know, if I had smaller bark, I would use a much smaller or medium-sized bark for this, but I don't have that. And I really, really need the moisture to retain more. So I'm just gonna bite the bullet. And I may not even put holes in the bottom of this. I may just control the water and give it like 1/4 a cup of water, or maybe 1/8 a cup, depending on how quick this drains. I think 1/8 a cup is gonna work for a cup this size, because this is pretty huge. Yeah, as you can see, I'm just making sure all the medium is packed in there and that we don't have, see, we have air pocket here. See, we don't want that. So I'm just gonna squeeze medium in there. And try to squeeze the soft stuff when you're squeezing so that you don't like break roots. I know, this is more easier said than done, but when you do it over and over a couple of times and you start getting the experience, what I'm saying actually starts making sense. It won't sound like a bunch of hoopla. Almost done here. This is a little long because I was gonna say as you can see, but I'm not sure if you could see, but the roots were a bit balled up, so it's gonna take a while for a lot of the medium to sort of find its way through those crevices. And this is why small bark is just a lot easier to work with, and it'll just fall right through. You won't have to worry about smashing some of the roots. I know I smash a couple of roots on every repot, but when you repot a healthy plant, those roots will grow back rather quick. And as you can see, I'm just literally picking up moss and bark. I have no, method to my madness. I have no madness in my methods. So, my Kupowitz looks pretty good in here. So as you can see, I'm almost covering the growth completely. And one of the reasons why I'm doing that is because that growth is gonna grow out and the roots are also gonna search for medium. So I just like to have the medium as far up as I can, but as airy as possible as well with some sphagnum moss so that it doesn't rot the actual bottom leaves, because we all know water does not rot, but it invites rot, which is a bacteria. And water just happens to be able to soften an area so that rot can attack. And this is why these terms become so complicated, because like one thing just like affects the other, but it's not actually that. And that's one of the things with water and rot. And yeah, I'm gonna have to solder some holes at the bottom because this is pretty tight in there. But there we have it. My Lindley Kupowitz is all repotted, and she should actually be a lot better. As you can see, the other pot was wider, but it was so much smaller that it was just drying out so fast, because not only does the pot evaporate, but guys, these roots are actually drinking the water. So when you have a big root system, you need a pretty good pot size to accommodate that. So that's gonna go there, and eventually when I put the holes in it, it'll be double cupped so that it doesn't evaporate fast. And that is the repotting of Lindley Kupowitz. And I used to tag and date my repots, but I don't anymore because I do my repots by ear. So that annual repot comes around, or like now, we have those emergency times where we need to jump into something else. And we'll go ahead and actually repot Hung Sheng Starry really quickly. And I actually have a cup that was already prepared. So we have that. And then we have one of these two cups that have old medium in them that was still good. So wash that, rinse. Which one will we use? I think we'll use this one. All right. So now let us repot our Hung Sheng Starry. Not one of my favorite paphs, by the way. One root. One root. And look at this. You see that? This is not even mold, you guys. This is like buildup from the tap water here, this white stuff. It's so crazy. And this is why I just completely stopped watering with the tap here. Completely, because it just destroys the medium. Yeah, we'll just throw these chunks out. It's okay if some of it stays in here because I'm watering with Fizan and all this stuff that will eventually break this stuff down. But I'm not going to throw out good medium, so we'll throw out the stuff around it because calcium and minerals don't spread like fungus, even though sometimes they look like it. So this is gonna be a quick repot and very easy, thank God. So we have one root there. We're just gonna throw the medium in here. Good amount of moss in there. Bark everywhere. Tap, tap, tap. Shake, shake, shake. Down, down, down. And again, we want to make sure that the base of the plant is completely covered so that the new growth goes right into the moist medium and not into the air. When path roots hit that air, they will dry. They will dry fast. They need to be in medium. They are not epiphytic like our phals. They're arguably terrestrial, but most of them, from my experience, are like semi-terrestrial, so they grow on top of the medium or on top of the ground and not in the ground, or even lithophytic, which means that they grow on rocks. So just want to squeeze down on the edges here. And that's perfect. See? So now we have our Hung Sheng Starry potted, and that was great. Nice and tight, double cupped. And my medium was already moist, so I don't need to water. I know a lot of people like to water after a repot. I do not need to water after repots. So there you have it. Gonna clean up. Don't forget to follow me on social media, guys. And if you have any questions about like how this repotting went, let me know. I think everything was pretty simple. I get my stuff from a range of places, and maybe I'll share that in the next couple of videos. I don't really want to like officially sponsor anyone, but I do get all of my stuff from like a range of places, like Amazon, Etsy, nurseries, IKEA. Yeah, so social media, again, the handle is The Right Path, and we will see you all in the next video.